Welcome to the Ask Me How I Know podcast, the only podcast in the multifamily niche replicating what takes place outside the walls of a seminar. This is like the lobby, where honest, unscripted conversations take place and transformation happens. We'll talk about practical problem solving in the multifamily niche, as well as overcoming limiting beliefs. Thank you for joining us today, and now for our featured guest. Welcome back to Ask Me How I Know. We have some fantastic guests with us today. In fact, this is the first time that we've had a couple on Ask Me How I Know, and I'm so excited. Thank you, Eric and Tamara, for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Hi, Julie. Great to see you again.
Great to see you. I will say that we met in a breakout session, and they had the most adorable dog in the breakout session with them. And I'm like, and they're so fun to talk with. I'm like, I have got to have these two on my podcast. They have so much insight and knowledge, and it just covers such a myriad of areas of not just investing, but like basically between the two of you, you have every part of real estate covered. Mm-hmm. That's about right.
Yep.
Eric, actually, as I just said, this is really funny. So those of you listening in the pre-show, I just got done telling them like, yeah, so we're not going to go into the details of how you got into investing, but tell us a little bit about your background that has helped you with what you're currently doing in real estate.
Me or Tamara?
I don't know. This is great. I've never had a couple on before, so I'm like, let's see.
Fight over it.
I know. Let's have you guys arm wrestle real fast.
I started buying flipping houses 25 years ago, actually before I met my wife, Tamara, here. And that's actually how I met her. Had sold a house, was looking to build a new house for the first time. She was actually the realtor that sold me the new construction house.
So real estate has given me a lot.
Yes.
So wait, you're saying that you married your agent?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So then we continued on with the buy and flip kind of strategy. And I was an engineer for 20 years. I worked at General Motors for about 15 and would do housework on the side and was always kind of raised in it and kind of did it my whole life. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of a natural fit for her and us to get married and then have doing this flip stuff. So, and then we got into the multifamily.
It's almost like you get married and have house babies.
We do plan on naming the buildings. Yeah.
We do. Yeah.
I mean, my husband and I talk about, when we are investing, you're trying to grow your liquidity, you're trying to grow your money. And so we call it money babies. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. There's a concept.
That's a good concept.
There is a rhyme behind that comment. And you have gone in and you've done fix and flips, Eric, and you do a lot of rehab. What are some of the other skills that you have brought into, just into the real estate world?
Having an engineering background, I have the whole budgeting process, mm-hmm. understanding the whole process and where I can improve the process and what, as you go into a building or into a property, you go, here's certain things you need to look at, and here's certain things you better spend money on because it's going to save you money in the long run. Mm-hmm. And is there a better way to do it than what's been done in the past? I used to say when I was in engineering, I'm like, there's nothing you can't do. It's just a matter of how much money, time, and mass you want to throw at something, but you can do anything you want to do if you just, like I said, put the time and money behind it. And so when it comes to the real estate end of it, that's just kind of my thing is I can walk into a building and I can sit there and start going in my head, we got to do this, 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 we got to do this. It's going to cost this, it's going to cost this, it's going to cost that, and have a budget pretty much worked out by the time I'm done walking through it.
That's so fun. It's almost like The Price is Right or one of those game shows where you can go, and I know other, contractors like this where it's like, okay, you're looking at the walls and you're looking at the paint needs, or maybe we have to redo this, and you're thinking even deeper than that behind the walls, under the,
Correct.
And you're just seeing the dollar signs.
Yep.
Correct.
Yeah. That is, I don't know that you know this, Eric, but that is a superpower. If nobody's told you that, this is the first for you. Being able to do that is a superpower, and that brings something very powerful. I was on a call this morning with a group of investors, and they lost out a couple of assets simply because they couldn't get a contractor out there soon enough to kind of give a general estimate of the scope of work. So,
Right.
that is huge. And Tamara, I mean, aside from being an agent and marrying your client, I just think it's adorable. I'm sorry. You have a broad skill set as well within the real estate world.
I do. I have the equivalent of about 25 years as well. Started on the lending side of things, and then segued into real estate in the new construction world for the first part of my 20 plus year of the real estate industry, and always had an eye for construction and just the overall process of it. So then that adds to and aids to where it complements his ability to see things. I almost wish I couldn't see drywall flaws because it makes me picky or pickier than I need to be, especially in the multifamily world. However, it is what it is. So then just throughout the years of, having a blend of, and then the downturn happened, and then I put my lending hat back on for a little bit, along with real estate and some credit repair that lended into things that then lended into picking up some, good properties when the downturn happened. And then we segued from single family to multifamily.
And you have, I mean, with your background, you guys are able to really maximize everything because you have your builder's license. So you were explaining you can act as a contractor.
Correct. Yeah. So then we're the general contractor on the projects and pull the permits, etc. Then find the contractors, the subcontractors underneath us to do the work and have, not that there's a control issue, but to have more control over it's a big project and a big process to oversee, and then to have that knowledge of what should go next, and even the price, it's back to the pricing.
Okay, so here's a question. This is one of Julie's rabbit hole questions, is that I know that a lot of times contractors do not show up on time, and they under promise. Well, no, they over promise and under deliver. Have you had any of those like, oh my gosh moments? Like, let's get these people in line. I know Eric's right here and all, but we can still talk about him, even though he's in the space. No, no, but have you had any of those moments that you've had to work through? And if so, like, what would you tell people? What are the suggestions?
Sometimes it's perseverance. One of my biggest complaints with contractors and subs is just they overpromise, underdeliver. And it's like, I'm more about communication, and I'm willing to work with my subs, right? So for me, it's like, if you can't make it because you get caught up and you're behind, just call me and let me know so I can adjust my schedule. So I'm not sitting here, have guys sitting around waiting because you're supposed to be here and you're not. Because I can switch gears quick and we can pivot to something else.
You can pivot? What?
Yeah. And a lot of times in construction, it's basically just logistics. I mean, you just got to have things lined up, ordered on time, know the schedule, to get things flowing at a pace. It's taken years to weed through contractors, and I have a short list of guys that I call now that 95% of them, when they say they're going to be there on Monday, they're there on Monday, right? Every once in a while they get caught up on another job, but they've learned to communicate. Say, hey, I got caught up. We're going to be there Tuesday. Okay, fine. I can adjust my day so we know that.
Yeah. Your time doesn't get wasted in other people's, because it becomes like that sequence of, other contractors working. It's like, okay, well, let's let everybody else in line know what's going on.
Right. The hard part's just weeding through, because there's so much work out there in a lot of states that it's a shortage of skilled labor type people. And so they can pick and choose. The hard part is just weeding through the contractors and finding the good ones. And you got to go through a lot of bad ones before you get to the good ones sometimes.
You two are the people to ask this of, okay? I am wondering, I mean, seriously, this is $1 million question. Everybody wants to know, like, how do I vet, a GP? How do I vet a deal before I invest in it? How about this? How about we talk about, how do you vet a contractor? I mean, there is an art to knowing who you're working with, and you both have some deep experience. What are, some of maybe the top few ways of, you right off the bat, you're making that phone call to a contractor and they're coming out and giving you a bid and everything. How would somebody know, like, okay, definitely not working with this person, or I should work with this one?
Some of it is we reach out to our network, right? Because we know a lot of builders. So she worked in new construction, so she knows a lot of the builders. I know a lot of the builders. We know a lot of the developers. We know a lot of guys that own companies within the building and construction industry. So if I'm looking for something specific, I'll reach out to my network and go, hey, who are you guys using to paint? Who are you using to put windows in, or who are you using? Where are you getting this from? And it's amazing. I mean, if you have a rapport and a friendship with them, they shoot you back stuff right away. Like, oh, use this guy. Here's his number. Boom.
Yes.
So that's the initial. That took years to build that network, right?
Right.
So if you don't have that network, for us, it's easy. We have the network. We've had it now for 20 plus years. So we've learned just to kind of reach out first. And then, you call and set up an appointment. And I can't tell you how many times I've said, okay, I'll be there on Monday at 3:00. Monday, 3:00 rolls around. They don't show up. Right. So I'm calling them. Where are you at? Oh, I caught on a job. Can I do it tomorrow? Okay. Well, right. My time is valuable. So you're not making brownie points.
You're on the short list immediately almost.
So they don't get cut off right there. You don't just say, done, didn't show up, didn't communicate. I am getting picky here because I'm like, oh, I really want to know your criteria. I've done this myself, but I'd love to hear
some of that is, but see, some of it is like, I understand because I am and I know like how you could get in a job and you think, oh, I should be done by noon, and here it's 3:00 in the afternoon and you're not even halfway through the job yet.
Yep.
Right. Because it turned into a can of worms that you weren't expecting.
Yes.
So I will cut guys some slack, right? If it's the first time and they'll call and say, hey, I'm late, I'm running late, I'm going to be there at 5:00. Okay, well, at least you called.
Yeah,
right?
Brownie point.
Right. I mean, but then some of it too is if they don't call, don't answer the phone, and then don't return my phone, then they're done. Like, okay, if you don't have the courtesy, because I called you twice and left you a message to call me back and say, hey, sorry, I got called up, then don't bother showing up. And then some of it's just a vibe. When I meet them, I talk to them, and there are guys that I'll meet right away and I go, I'm going to work with them. I can just tell just from the way they talk, just the way they are, their demeanor, just the feeling I get that they're going to do what they say they're going to do when they say they're going to do it. And then other people, you walk away from them and I go, something didn't sit right with me about what they said. So the criteria for me is, do they show up? Do they return phone calls? Right? Are they recommended? Because the guys that I know are guys that I would recommend, right? So if somebody I know that I would recommend, and I've been burned with recommending, make recommendations, and people go, when you use that guy, and I'm like, so I'm really cautious about who I refer out. And I know my friends that refer me people the same way. They've been burned. They're very cautious about who they recommend to whom. And so you just develop the reputation. So then once you kind of develop the relationship, then it really, you get this guy and that guy, and then this guy recommends that guy. And now you got a decent work of subs that you can use that will show up, do what they say they're going to do, and they're going to do it. I mean,
show up and deliver.
Particularly.
No, but that's good. Yeah. They show up, they communicate, they come recommended. Those are really powerful things for everyone to keep in mind as they're working, on their projects, and as well as just understanding where your project or where your property manager, how are they doing this, and keeping, depending on what side of the investment you're on.
And you'll find specifically in multifamily too, some people will show up and they see the building, so right away they go, oh, okay.
They tack on.
They'll tack on.
Yes.
And
it's like, wait a minute.
Whereas I know what the pricing is, so it's really hard for them to really do that to me. And that's something that I kind of do the shot across the bow. Let them know off front that I know what I'm talking about and I know what pricing should be. But I'm fair with them. I mean, I tell them, I'm like, look, you're in business to make money. I get that. One thing that drives me crazy in these forums that I see on Facebook is, does anybody have any contractors that do flipping pricing? And I'm like,
flipping pricing.
Well, it's because they want a discount because you're going to get what you pay for, right?
Amen.
So I get it. You're in business to make as much. I'm in business to make as much as I can. I tell them this. You're in business to make money. I'm in business to save money. So we can find a happy medium. And so you develop a good relationship with contractors because they go, hey, if I'm fair with him, he gives me good work.
Exactly. It's a balancing.
It's a balancing
Just find
act.
a balance. That would be, I would say, a key.
Yeah. And it's really knowing your market. It really is knowing your market and really knowing what things should cost. And I don't mean going to Home Depot and looking at pricing. It's like you need to go look into the wholesale side of things and figure out what cabinets cost, what windows cost, what countertops cost, and then negotiate. If you got a 10 unit or a 20 unit building, you go in there and go, I'm going to be my exclusive supplier for countertops. What can you do for me on countertops? And then just be loyal to it. And like I said, I've done business with a lot of these guys now for years. I know I could probably get it a little cheaper somewhere else, but I know the quality of their work.
It's powerful. I've experienced both. We've learned, find somebody who's solid. It's worth the little bit. In life, it's 10% more. Anybody who's willing to put 10% more effort or pay 10% more, or it's just like that 10% more gets you to the very top, the very best of everything. It's not double or triple like you're saying.
Right.
Tamara, I'm sure you hear, I hear people all the time, throwing in, new carpet's going to cost like, $40,000. Well, on multifamily, yes, it can get expensive, but it's like the price tags people give things are astronomical. And you're like, okay, let's come down to reality.
Right. Well, let's come down to reality. And then now I share that, we could do the work. I could do the work for you and give you an accurate quote estimate on what it's going to cost, what it's going to take. And I reel them back in, for lack of a better, let's reel this back in, that it's not, $70,000 to do a kitchen always.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, and as you are thinking about, the multifamily sector, and so I just love that you guys cover so many different facets, and in your careers, you have spanned so many different parts of the industry. And then you crossed over and you came over to the commercial side, which is exciting, super exciting. What were some of the differences that you found when you signed and you bought your very first, multifamily unit?
Well, for me, it was back to the process of the whole, from residential to commercial. It's completely different from a RESPA standpoint, from a paperwork standpoint, it was just different. For sure. The feeling was exciting and scary all in the same blender.
For me, it was being more on the asset management side of things, where she's more the
money side
of things. For me, it was just the different dynamic that a property has. When we first got into it, my mentality was, it's going to be like having 20 houses in one spot.
I have a neighborhood. It's just stacked on top of itself.
Stacked right there in one spot. And
perfect way to put it.
What you fail to realize, or what you learn quickly, is that when the boiler goes out, it's not a boiler going out for one house. It's a boiler going out for 20.
Lights out in the neighborhood.
Right. So your phone starts blowing up because people are cold, or, you get people complaining about this neighbor because they're making too much noise. And so you realize that, okay, it's juggling. It's kind of like having all my properties under one roof, but then it's completely different because I have all this other dynamic now that I have to deal with.
Oh my gosh, I have got to interject. This is so much like children.
Oh,
we were talking about house babies before, but when you really start thinking about it and you have your subdivision or your neighborhood all stacked on top of itself, and then, just like children, they start squabbling and things happen. And
oh, yep.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to put them in timeout.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you got to sit there and say, like, they'll complain about, well, they were being loud at 9:00. Okay, well, I really can't say anything. It was 9:00. If it was midnight or 11:00, I could say something. But 9:00, what am I supposed to say? Right. Yeah. And it's like, I get it. You got to, let's all be respectful. Can we all just get along? We all got to live under the same roof. Right. That was probably one of the biggest differences that I saw, was just my eyes were open to, it's just a really different dynamic, as opposed to having 50 single family homes, having 50 units in one place or 20 in one. It's just a different dynamic.
How's that dynamic of signing on that loan?
Well, for me, I was almost heart attack inducing. I was literally when we first signed on the first loan, I got pale. I mean, they looked at me, they thought I was going to pass out, and I felt like I was going to throw up. Yeah. She was okay with it. I'm like,
money girl over here is totally fine. She's got that's your superpower. I keep the cool.
Exactly. No, yeah.
but now it's funny. We're in the middle of a renovating a 50 unit, and I've written so many big checks, or just anymore. I'm just like, oh, what's $100,000 check? Oh, it's nothing. I mean, it's just, you write it, you don't even think about it. So as you get used to it, the numbers, the more you get into it, you go, what's $2 million? Yeah.
It's true. We missed out, and my husband and he knows, we talk about this. I'm like, we missed out on that one because he was, and I'm not throwing him under the bus. It was one of those growing times where it was like, it was $1 million property. It's in a great location, all of that. And I'm like, let's do it. Let's go for it. And he hadn't made that transition from residential to multifamily yet. All the zeros just gave him that heart attack, like, I don't know about that. Now it's not a problem, but it's a matter of making that mental transition to, oh, it's okay that there were all these zeros because I have this many units. I have this many tenants. So all these zeros add up and make sense.
Yeah, she's all that and real calm. But initially she was paying the bills, right? So when we first bought them, we didn't have a property management company. So she was paying all the bills. So I could always tell when it was the mortgage time of the month. I would come home and she'd be sitting there at her desk and she'd be all, and I'm like, and she goes, I just had to write a check for $12,000. So I'm like, okay. I'm like,
it doesn't make any sense.
I signed on the dotted line for $1 million, right. And you're like okay with it, and you're freaking out about $12,000 check. I'm like, so I was like, well, to keep a happy house, we need to hire a third-party property manager who takes care of the bills.
There is a lot of truth to that, having a third party take care of things. But you're thinking longer term. Are you considering opening your own property management company? And
after passing the broker's test last week,
woo, good job.
That's a possibility in the future, and it's probably something closer than we could have before.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, as you're developing all those assets, and they're all in one location, right? One community. Is that correct?
Well, they're within the Metro Detroit area.
Yeah, not far from each other at all. So
yeah, they're not hours away from each other.
Correct.
Not yet. We're working on that.
Yeah, not yet.
Yeah, exactly. Good job. That's right. As you think about husbands and wives, I've noticed that, and maybe it's just that new car syndrome, I feel like I'm noticing more husbands and wives joining the multifamily niche, over the last several months. So I'm wondering if you guys could speak to getting along. Speaking of getting along, how do you manage, how do you stay healthy as a family and run a successful business? Are there any growing pains with that, or?
Oh yeah.
I love it. The heads are nodding.
Definitely. Well, growing pains, and I think all relationships, whether business or personal, are work in progress. At times through this process, there was a communication breakdown that needed to be corrected, and we've corrected it and grown through it. And it's, my philosophy is grow through what you go through.
Oh, I love that.
So I think that's where we're at in the process. But to rewind the tape, I think that's where joining like the Warrior Group and that departmentalize things to say, okay, to seriously sit down and say what your strengths and weaknesses are. Probably earlier in the process would have helped to work together better. But then that's where, no matter what it is, my philosophy too, as well, is you should try to learn something every day. So if you bring that into the space, then that's helpful as well.
Rod says it when he says unimaginable fear.
That could go lots of different ways. I can't wait for your explanation.
That was helpful.
Yeah, when we got into this space, once we got into it, I was all in. Like, I literally was all in. I focused on it. I'm like, this is our future. This is going to pay off. And it's been a hard road because we bought 2 properties within 6 months of each other, and the one of them was a complete dumpster fire. I call it an F property. So I mean, they talk about A, B, C, and D. This was an F property,
and you bought it. You're the
It was a
lucky
lot of
owner.
heavy lifting. Right away, I'm in construction mode, I'm in renovation mode, I'm in stop the bleeding mode,
Mhm.
and so I was completely focused on that, and so our communication, and she was in this fear because she was seeing this property basically fall apart in front of our eyes. When I kind of knew it was going to do that, she didn't see it like I did, and we didn't communicate that. So she was in this fear, this is going to ruin us. And I was like, oh no, this is going to be a great property. And we just didn't communicate it. That's the biggest key as a husband and wife
Mhm.
is you got to have each other's backs, and you have to be able to stop and go, okay, why are you feeling this way? Right?
Press the pause button
Press the
for a minute.
pause button and not just go, well, you should just believe in it. And that's, because I was so focused and driven on just getting things lined up that I had to do to get it moving. So as a husband and wife, you have to take the time to stop. I was working 7 days a week. I was putting in, 15 hours a day. She'd be like, well, Abby has a basketball game. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to make it to the game. I had to then take a step back and go, my daughter's important. My wife's important. We need to figure out like what's, and then talk and go, okay, I understand why you're feeling that way, but here's the numbers. I mean, here are the numbers. So it's like,
Yeah, reel it back into the logic
reel
that
back
I'm a
into the
numbers
logic.
person.
Right.
I'm a okay, I get numbers. Give me the numbers.
So
Speaking her
I
language.
lost sight of the numbers.
so I mean, as a husband and wife, I mean, you have to be on the same page,
Mhm.
and you have to have the same kind of goals and visions and dreams.
Mhm.
And if you don't, that's fine, but you have to be able to support each other in this journey because it's not an easy road. It's not. Everybody, I love it when people say, "Oh, I want apartments because I want passive income," and I chuckle because I'm like, there ain't nothing passive about it. I mean, from my perspective, right? But
Until you
look at
join the LP side. When you're truly a passive investor, then you can just be like, great, there's that mailbox money.
right,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah, we're not, and that's. I mean, we're looking to grow and looking to.
But as a husband and wife, you have to. The big thing is communication. It really is.
Mhm.
Do you have anything you would want to add to that, Tamara?
No, not really, because it really does boil down to communication and being on the same page and, not letting it break down to where either one of us think that we don't believe in the other one, because that never happened. But then it was sliding in that direction at times. And that was never the case, so again, it goes back to communication that if you would have broken that down, break it down to, what's the foundation? The foundation never got broken. It's just there's the belief system though could have taken a wrong turn. So.
Oh, definitely. Well, and that's what I'm also hearing. Man, you guys are so awesome. But I'm also like, you have so much
Raw.
that requires so much humility to be able to be self-aware, to be able to evaluate, where is my spouse, where's my partner, where am I? You guys, it sounds like you're really evaluating so that instead of doing, like a demolition derby type impact, maybe there's some bumper car moments that are gentle, and you're able to have those, that communication and those conversations.
Yep.
It's really, I couldn't agree with you more, just in my experience with, being married to my business partner, it's like, that communication
Well,
changes.
you want speed bumps. You don't want mountains, right?
Oh gosh,
amen.
amen.
I would rather go over a speed bump any day than go to climb a mountain and try to, get to the other side. So keep it, if you keep it smaller, speed bumps or blips or hurdles or no matter what is going on in life, I think it's easier if you take care of the speed bumps.
Well, and the other thing that you got to watch is that we can be out where we can have dinner as a family, right? And it's very easy for us to start talking about apartments, investing, the deal that's on the table. If you looked at this, if you talked to that lender, right, what's going on with the tenants and
kids, we're going to adopt another kid.
and your daughter, like our daughter, would sit there and go, okay, I've had enough of this. Like, so you have to kind of turn that off, even though it's your business partner across the table, and you have to be present for your kids and listen to your kids.
Wow. Okay. Go into this because there are a lot of parents with kids, teenagers on down and grown adult. Like, let's speak to that.
Yeah, no, it's because it's very easy to get focused and driven on, I have to succeed at this, or I'm going to succeed, or I need that next deal. I'm going to focus on, I got to get this done, this done. I'm underwriting this deal. It's very easy and you're sitting there going, I'm doing this because I love my family and I love my children. I love my wife. And this is why I'm doing it. And they should understand that. And it's very easy to get that mindset. And then you end up having resentment in your family because they're like, you're not present. You're missing my baseball game or my softball game or my basketball game or my volleyball game, or you're not there for dinner. And when you are for dinner, you're talking about work. You're not asking me what my day was like. Again, you have to turn that off, take a step back, and make it about them. Right? I mean, because ultimately that's why it's ultimately why you're doing this. You're doing this for your family, right? Really. So if you don't take care of that, you could lose that.
Definitely. Definitely. Tamara, do you have anything you'd want to add to that?
I think he really covered it. And it's back to it's a work in progress. Nothing's perfect. And that's actually what our daughter taught us when she was like 3 years old, and now she's almost going to be 15. And I don't remember the exact, taking it out of context to a certain degree. However, she taught us that lesson a long time ago. And so to remind yourself, as long as you're doing, things are top of mind and you're working on things, and it's back to the pause. There's a lot of P words, I think, in 2020.
You're right.
Pivot, pause.
That, and then that's where to talk, to continue the or the communication with your children as well, on whatever level you're comfortable speaking with them, because each child has a different, personality. And we were, our daughter, her personality type she's an old soul. And so she likes to have grown-up conversations and communications. And her friends recently asked me about real estate, and they actually were talking about how they feel mortgages and that should be more in the school. And I was just like, they're like, you should teach a class. And I'm like, well, I'm your girl. Like, yeah, I'm your, that mom that you can come to, and, just always see me as a resource. So it was interesting just recently there, you had a little sleepover, and 15-year-olds are talking to me about, so Mrs. Leever, will you help me someday? And it's like, yes.
Yes, I will help you. That's funny. My daughter, she's sat in and, done some learning with me. And it's just funny because she's made the comment, about, yeah, I'll go into investing with you someday, and I'm like, that'd be great if you want to do that. And we're up hiking one of our peaks, and there's a rundown lookout. My son's joking around, like, well, we need some work, but we could flip this. It's kind of funny how, and I grew up in a real estate home, so I kind of feel, probably what they're feeling, they're feeling it their own way, but right. You're right. And it's so hard. Eric, I hear you. This week I've been really just super focused, and I felt very disconnected. And that was my own personal revelation, the last couple of days was, I got to step back. I got to slow down. Because like you said, you'll end up with nothing. And what's the point in that? Because they grow fast.
They do. Oh.
They do.
Next thing you know, they're 15.
Oh, no. Correct. I turn around and I look at her and I'm like, where did my little baby girl go?
Oh, yeah, but the grown-ups don't age at all. Not one bit.
Oh, no. We're aging in reverse, right. I say.
Exactly. Oh my goodness, that's fantastic. I really appreciate just sharing this space. I really love real conversation on, that takes a full perspective on, investing. And boy, we covered the territory on this. I mean, everything from, vetting your contractor down to making sure you're taking care of your family. I love it. Is there anything else that you would like to, just kind of say, I want to add this? Any gems you want to leave us with?
No. I mean, I just keep plugging away and believe in yourself. Anything's possible.
I would concur that we covered a lot, and just to keep plugging along and keep believing.
Thank you so much for joining us on Ask Me How I Know. I can't wait to see where your journey leads. And the next thing you know, you guys are going to be like just all fully passively invested. You'll have your property management company. I see big things for you guys, and I'm excited for you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thanks so much for joining me for another episode of Ask Me How I Know. My guests are the most humble successes, so be sure to show them your appreciation by rating this episode 5 stars, which sounds silly, but let's be real. Ratings, likes, and shares, they take no time at all, but make all the difference in the world, if only to boost morale. Also, since I don't spend time on the how and why they got into investing, be sure to check out the show notes to get to know more about today's guests, including other podcasts they've been on that has a more traditional format that will give other details about their investment journey. It'll also tell you things like the most influential person in their life and what they're reading right now, as well as how to connect with them. And please subscribe and rate Ask Me How I Know so it reaches other listeners like you. Until next time, go find your freedom.